What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Goshen's Games, and I've been getting this question a lot when it comes to the PS5. How does the PS5 read the PS4 games? I'm going to explain this to you guys so you understand, and before I do that, make sure you guys are hitting that thumbs up. I'd appreciate that, and don't forget to leave a comment, as I will be drawing a winner monthly for a year membership of PlayStation Plus. Let's get to the video. So if you are putting a PS4 game into your PS5, how is it detecting it? What is it going to read it at? People have asked me, is it going to play automatically in 60 FPS if I put it into my PS5? Yes and no. Okay, the reason why I say yes and no is because it all depends on the game. So for example, and I like to use this game as an example a lot, Resident Evil 2 Remake. And the reason why I like using this game as an example for a lot of different videos is because it's a perfect example of a game that runs differently on a base model PS4, runs differently on a PS4 Pro, and runs differently on a PS5. Now, there is no PS5 version of this game, which is why it's a good example. So, Resident Evil 2 Remake, if I was to put this into my base model PS4, it runs at 30 FPS. Okay? It'll run at 1080p, 30 FPS if I put this in my base model PS4. If I put this into a PS4 Pro, it's going to run it at 60 FPS, or as close as possible, because there will be frame rate dips in this game on a PS4 Pro. So it's maximum 60 FPS, and it can run it at 4K with HDR if you choose to run HDR. I don't like HDR in the games. It always looks bad. The reason for this is because it has PS4 Pro Enhanced mode, which allows it to run at the higher resolution and the higher frames per second. Now, if I put this game into my PS5, it's going to run it in PS4 Pro Enhanced mode. But here's the difference between running it in a PS4 Pro and running it in a PS5. Because of the hardware capabilities in the PS5, it will run it at a constant 60 FPS, as opposed to in the PS4 Pro, where there will be frame rate dips occasionally, depending on how much or what is going on the screen at a specific time. So the more images that are trying to be rendered on the PS4 Pro, the less frames you're going to get. But again, it will be up to 60 FPS. But on the PS5, it'll run at a constant 60 FPS while still maintaining the 4K resolution and HDR if you choose to run HDR. Now, the other side of the spectrum, why I said yes and no, is because you have games like Last of Us Part 2 that are locked at 30 FPS. There's no PS5 version as of this video for Last of Us Part 2. Now, what happens when you put this game into a base model PS4 is it'll run up to 30 FPS, and yes, there will be frame rate drops in this game on a base model PS4. There are times where it can drop down to about 20 FPS, and it's very noticeable. If you run this on a PS4 Pro, it'll usually stay at a constant 30 FPS. There will be times where it might dip down to 25 FPS, but it's pretty constant at 30. Now, if I put this into my PS5, it'll run 30 FPS all day, no problems. And yes, it'll run 4K and with HDR if you choose to run HDR. And again, I don't like running HDR. It does not look good. The blood looks overly saturated. It just doesn't look good. Now, here's where we get into a little bit of a difference with some other things. Okay, so if I'm putting a game into my PS4 versus a PS5, there's going to be longer loading times in the PS4. On the PS5, there's going to be very little, if any, loading to it. And this is due to the PS5 hardware. I keep wanting to say PS4. This is due to the PS5 hardware being able to drastically reduce the loading times in some situations. Last of Us Part 2 is a perfect example of this. In the loading times for The Last of Us Part 2, they are cut in half on the PS5. So I hope that this answered your question, because I know some of you guys have been wondering how the PS5 reacts when you put a PS4 game into it. And there you go. I've done a comparison video for Last of Us Part 2, comparing the PS4, or playing it on the PS4, comparing it to playing it on the PS5. You guys can go ahead and check that out. I'll put that at the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day.